us now from his home state of South Dakota is Republican Senator Mike Rounds. Senator, many people had many feelings about the emotional scene in the Oval Office last week, but what we're seeing in London today suggests that maybe this may turn out okay. If Europe and Canada step up to strengthen Ukraine's position, maybe Zelensky and Trump both get what they want, or am I being too optimistic here?
No, I think long term, we still want to get that minerals deal put together. I think that's what the president wants. And along with that comes some automatic security guarantees. If we've got Americans working with Ukrainians to develop those mineral resources, it naturally means that Mr. Putin has got to be on guard with the fact that he should not be any place putting Americans in harm's way. So I think this is the first step. We've got to get it back on track once again, but that's the goal, get that done. And then once again, when we talk about dealing with Mr. Putin, we all know that the only way that you can have a lasting peace is if you can have a peace which is verifiable. You've got to be able to have it enforceable. That's one thing I think we all agree on. But this is the first step. So I'm very optimistic that we can still get this deal done.
And that's what the real point of contention beyond the emotions in the Oval Office was about, whether or not the United States would provide a security guarantee to Ukraine. Ukraine said, we'll sign away the rights to our minerals for future U.S. development, but we want a guarantee that the United States will enforce any sort of ceasefire. That does put the United States on the line. Is that a reasonable demand for Ukraine to make?
I think the fact that the president is suggesting that we would have a presence there means that we protect American citizens. And that's what I think he was frustrated with Mr. Zelensky is he's saying, look, this is the first step. Put together the deal that we're offering you. Put this minerals deal together, because that brings us into your country. And when we do that, that automatically ties us together. And from there, we can start talking about a lasting peace. But once again, we all know the only type of a lasting peace with Mr. Putin is one which is enforceable. And I think that got lost to Mr. Zelensky in the discussions. And I hope we get it all back on track again. The president's right. This is the right step to make.
Okay, it's hard to tell. The emotions running high, as you point out. It's hard to tell how much of this is posturing, how much of this is a real realignment. I'm skeptical, but when I saw the United States joined Russia and North Korea at the United Nations on Monday, opposing what seemed like, from the surface level, a feel-good resolution calling for the end of the war on the 3-year anniversary of Russia's invasion, it definitely got my attention. So from where you sit on armed services and intelligence committees, how seriously should we take this talk of realignment?
I think there's two parts to this. Number one, what are the facts? And the facts are Russia invaded Ukraine. Russia is the aggressor. Russia created this problem in the first place. The second piece always is, what is the value of a resolution? And do you put together an irritational resolution which puts our country, which wants to be a mediator in this particular case, in a position of once again taking the side of Ukraine publicly during a time in which our president wants to be a mediator? The president wants to find a path forward to peace. We get that. It doesn't change the facts that Putin and Russia are the aggressor in this particular case, but let's not go out of our way to try to make it more difficult to find that peace. And I think that's the challenge that the United States found itself in this particular position. But Russia is the aggressor. Clearly, they're the adversary in this particular case. But somebody has to stand in the middle and try to find a middle ground to get to a ceasefire to stop the killing. I think that's where the president wants to be in this case.
Okay, on Tuesday, Senator, you will be in the audience as the president addresses a joint session of Congress, and you are going to, I'm very sure, hear a lot about a big, beautiful bill. Now, in the Senate, you guys held the House's feet to the fires. You were ready to jam them and give them your two-bill approach because they couldn't get a deal together on spending. But then at the last minute, the House passed a blueprint of their own. Where is that now? Do you believe the House and Senate are close enough here that you can do this all in one bill?
Good question. If we can, that's great, because every time we do one of these bills, it means we get to do a vote-a-rama, and they are miserable. They're all-night events. And so if we could get by on one bill, believe me, there isn't anybody in the Senate that wouldn't like to get this all done in one bill. The two-bill approach was supposed to be in parallel with one bill, but still available in case this one does not work. We've got a long way to go yet, but we are optimistic. Our goal of actually fixing things in the economy. I mean, when I talk to folks back here in South Dakota, what they care about is the cost of living. They care about the cost of energy. They want to see a border which is absolutely strong and secure. That's what our first bill was designed to do. If the House can put it all together in one big, beautiful bill so that people back here in my home state say, see, we get it. You honored your commitment. You are fixing it. You're working with the president. You're getting this thing done. That's our goal. And we're working in unison with them, parallel courses, but we're not in opposition. We're working side by side. We just we thought maybe two bills might be easier to get done than one bill. But if the House can actually follow through and get it all done in one big, beautiful bill, you're not going to hear anybody in the Senate complaining.
Okay, the big stumbling block looks like it's going to be on Medicaid. So the president and House Republicans are insistent that they are not going to cut anybody's benefits, but it seems like they will cut the amount of money that is available to fund those benefits. That would mean that would be dropped in the laps of the states. You're a former governor, and wrestling with the costs of the Obamacare Medicaid expansion, which brought Medicaid into for working class families, made it available to a lot of families in your state. How are you going to try to navigate that? What do you do about Medicaid? Because it looks like that's the only place to get to the kind of big cuts that House Republicans are talking about.
Yeah, our challenge is going to be defining waste, fraud, and abuse, which everybody agrees should be cleaned out. The part where we start talking about where people are actually receiving benefits is one that most members of the Senate have said that's not what we're going after. And so how do you separate out the elimination of waste, fraud, and abuse so that you're actually reducing the total costs of operating Medicaid from actually reducing benefits? As a former governor, and there are a lot of us in the Senate, the one thing that we've been concerned about is simply transferring the cost from the federal government back to the states would be a sticking point. It's one to be negotiated yet, but you are correct, Chris. That would be a tough one to be able to get through, probably the House or the Senate.
Okay, last thing, we're looking for efficiencies, looking for those cuts. Elon Musk is the president's man on the job, but I'm hearing increasing murmurs from Congress that this needs to be codified, this needs to be done through Congress. It can't work on an ongoing basis if it is just a special government employee and not codified and done by Congress. What needs to happen here to formalize the president's efforts?
For the first time in history, we have a president who actually wants to reduce the size of the executive branch of government. We're going to help him get that done. But as we do that, where they find areas of waste, fraud, abuse, and so forth, we're going to help we will identify that. And it means we can either reallocate the resources back directly into benefits or efficiencies. But along with that, we can also reduce the total amount that a particular department might have to have allocated to them in the next appropriations bill. That means less of a deficit. It means getting closer to a balanced budget. That means stopping what is an inflationary trend that this government and the previous administration went crazy on. We've got to bring inflation down. We've got to bring down the cost of living for Americans. That's what the American people put president in place. That's what they're asking us to do. We want to work side by side to get that done. And the whole reason is so that people back home actually see that we're delivering on our promises, working together rather than fighting with one another to reduce the costs of living, secure that border, but actually see a path forward so that we're not putting our United States government in bankruptcy long term.
Okay, if you were from Huron, just like Senator Rounds is, you would have passed by the statue of the world's largest pheasant on Highway 14, and you would certainly know him already. But if you don't, there he is. Senator Mike Rounds, we thank you.